الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيبنا حبيب إله العالمين محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Tonight, as you know, we are commemorating the martyrdom of the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam was born in the year 232 after Hijrah. And as you know, he passed away in the year 260. That is the beginning of the Imamah of Imam al-Asr, Ajjalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. So altogether, he lived only for 28 years. And since his father passed away 254, his Imamah only lasted for 5 or 6 years. However, the time of his Imamah was one of the most turbulent times of the Shi'i history. The time of caliphs like Mutawakkil and people like him, and the time of great pressure on all Shias in all parts of the Muslim land. And of course, the pressure was pointed most of all on the Imam himself, alayhi salam. He was most of his life restricted to an army garrison, especially after he was moved to Samarra by Mutawakkil. So a very difficult and turbulent time. Nevertheless, everyone in the Shi'i world, all scholars, knew that something is going to happen which is going to change the main trend of Shi'i Imamah very soon. And that was, of course, the occultation of the Imam. At the time of Imam Hassan al-Askari, and even before him, everyone knew that Hassan al-Askari is the father of the last Imam who is going to disappear for a long time. I want to mention one hadith here, which is reported by one of the most famous companions of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, his father. Knowing that, of course, the 11th Imam is going to end the era of the Imamah as they knew until that time, and a new era of Imamah was going to begin. And this was a turning point in the Shi'i history. This hadith is reported by Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari, who is one of the prominent members of the Ahlul Bayt at the time of Imam al-Ridha and Imam al-Jawad and Imam al-Hadi. One of the big, of course, and outstanding personalities of Shia. He says, I heard from Abul Hassan al-Askari, that is Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, because Abul Hassan al-Askari is referring to Imam al-Hadi. Abu Muhammad al-Askari refers to Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, since both of them, of course, were somehow restricted to army garrisons. They were called Askari. He says, I heard from Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam saying that al-khalafu min ba'di ibni al-Hasan, the successor after me is my son Hassan. فَكَيْفَ لَكُمْ بِالْخَلَفِ بَعْدَ الْخَلَفِ. What are you going to do with the successor after him? Successor after successor. قلت ولما جعلني الله فداك. I said, why? What's the reason? What difference it would have? قال لأنكم لا ترون شخصه ولا يحل لكم ذكره باسمه. Because you are not going to see him, his person, and it is not permissible for you to mention him by his name. I asked him, how should we mention him then if we are not allowed to mention his name? قال فقولوا الحجة من آل محمد صلوات الله عليه وسلامه. So he says, do not mention the name, just say the one who is the proof, the hujjah from آل Muhammad alayhi salam. Now this hadith is mentioned in Al-Kafi by Kulaini, and if we ponder upon it, it would tell us lots of things about the situation at the time of Imam al-Hadi and Imam al-Askari. Why it was not allowed. Of course, now we mention the name of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, there is no restriction on us. But why at that time it was not allowed for the Shias even to name the Imam? Although he was in occultation, they were not allowed to even name him, mention his name. It would show the great pressure that was surrounding the whole family of the Prophet. And of course, despite all these difficulties, despite the restrictions, despite putting Imam al-Askari in an army garrison so that all the army was surrounding him, and in a way that no one could establish any contact with the Imam alayhi salam, still the Khilafah of Bani al-Abbas were very much afraid of the existence of the Imam. Just his life being among other people, living among other people in Samarra, under the complete control of the Khilafah of Bani al-Abbas, it was still felt to be a danger. And still people thought that this is a high position to be kept. A very interesting story. There is a story mentioned in many books of history and hadith from someone called Ahmad ibn Ubaidullah al-Khaqan. Now this Ubaidullah al-Khaqan, or Ubaidullah ibn al-Khaqan, was a wazir of Banu al-Abbas at the time of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. And this Ahmad ibn Ubaidullah was his son. And he was, at the time that he is mentioning this story, he was the ruler of Qum. Now of course he was very much against Ahlul Bayt, and he was put as the ruler of Qum to restrict, of course, the activities of Shia in Qum. However, of course, the Shia in Qum was very strong. The one place that no one could do anything about was Qum at that time, which was a stronghold of Shias and Shia ulama. And it's interesting that Qum never accepted the rule of Banu al-Abbas or others. They had their own system and their own environment of Shia scholarship, even at that time. However, this was put as the ruler in Qum, and he was somehow affected by the environment of Qum. That's why he's mentioning such a story. And he says something about Imam Hassan al-Askari coming to his father, and his father respecting him very much. It's a very long story, and he says, I was amazed because my father was hating all members of the Banu Hashim. But this one he respected so much. He stood from his throne, and he went, he received him, he spoke to him very, very honorably and with great respect. And I was amazed. I asked him, who is this man? He explained for me. One very interesting thing he mentions. He says that this man, Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, he had an uncle That's Ja'far al-Kazzab, of course. And Ja'far al-Kazzab, he came to my father, Ubaydullah, and he said that I give you 200,000 dinars. 200,000 dinars was great money at that time, because you could buy a house with about 200 dinars. So 200,000 dinars was a great sum of money. I give you 200,000 dinars, and you give me the position of Hassan al-Askari. He told my father. And my father laughed at him. He said, I have not given this position to Hassan al-Askari so that I could give it to you. 200,000 dinar is nothing that you could pay me, and how much money you are going to have as your income if you become the Imam of Shias, so that you want to give me 200,000 dinar and I give the position to you. And this shows that still the position was very much respected, not only among the Shias. Everyone knew what is the meaning of Imamah, what's the meaning of being an Imam of Shia. Despite, of course, Imam Hassan al-Askari had not reached his 30s yet, but everyone knew that what was the position, how important it was. And politicians knew how dangerous it was for them. And that's why, of course, they made the Imam a martyr, and they were looking for his son to kill him as well. So, the situation, the stories, whatever is recorded in the history would tell us about different aspects of the position of Imamah, the relationship between Shias and the rulership of Banu Abbas at that time, and many other things that would become clear for us if we analyze what is mentioned in this history, although not much has reached us. What has reached us is very little. We shouldn't think that the history is only what we know in the books. Much of it is lost. A very little has reached us, and we know very little about what went on in the first few centuries. Especially immediately after the Prophet, we don't know much about it. That's why usually people are confused about the situation. Now, a few aspects of the life of Imam I want to mention here. First of all, I mentioned the political situation which was created for the Imam, especially after Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, for three Imams, Imam al-Jawad, Imam al-Hadi and Imam al-Askari. They were in a very, very difficult situation, since they were very well known as Ibn al-Rida, because of course Imam al-Rida was an heir apparent of the caliphate. He had become very well known, although the position was not anything to be mentioned beside his spiritual position. But of course, worldly people, they knew the position to be very high. So, especially Imam al-Jawad, to be known as Ibn al-Rida. And then, because of the political competitions inside Banu al-Abbas, everyone was fearing that one day again someone might rise inside Banu al-Abbas and try to take side with Banu al-Hashim, especially with Ibn al-Rida, because Imam al-Rida was someone who Ma'mun had chosen to take side with. They were afraid that maybe among Banu al-Abbas someone would rise and make side with Ibn al-Rida, Imam al-Jawad, Imam al-Hadi and Imam al-Askari. So they were put under great pressure, great pressure. It is not really describable how the pressure at that time was strong against these A'imma alayhimus salam. And how, despite their young age, of course age was not important, in this type of position age is not important, but how they really calmed the situation for their Shias, so that the pressure was, the brunt of the pressure on them rather than to be on their Shias. Secondly, Especially Imam al-Askari alayhi salam was living in a time where the Shi'i hadith and the Sunni hadith was being compiled and collected. And of course, he was not directly taking part in this process of compilation of Shi'i hadith especially. Although they had influence on Sunni scholars as well in the process of compilation of hadith. However, especially directly, they did not have any role with the compilation of Shia hadith as well. Because, of course, we know that the Shia scholars were scattered all around the Muslim land. They were compiling hadith. It was not, of course, possible to somehow intervene in this process. But, of course, Imam was giving direction. He was writing letters to many great scholars, great, respected, old scholars of the Shi'i community, directing them spiritually so that in their activity of compilation of hadith, they were somehow guided into the right path and were checked upon. As I said, directly Imam did not intervene in this process of compilation of hadith. But in many occasions, for example, A'imma alayhimus salam, Imam al-Hadi, he just studied a book compiled by one of the Shi'i scholars and said, this book is correct. Rahimallah, for example, such and such person, whatever they have collected is right, or is what a nice type of book they have compiled. In this way they were giving directions. The other aspect of the life of Imam alayhi salam was the general scientific and philosophical attitude of the society of Muslims overall, which was being somehow again checked by Imam from the restricted place that they were living. Of course, they couldn't have much interaction with people, but even from the house arrest that they were living in, they were having some sort of influence on people. Just one story would be very telling, although this shouldn't be the only story which was going on at that time. You know, that was the time when the books of philosophy, of mathematics, of physics were being translated from Greek into Arabic. And that was where Muslim philosophers were emerging in the second and third, especially in the 3rd century after Hijrah. Muslim philosophers were emerging. And of course, when philosophers were emerging, questions were emerging, problems, intellectual difficulties were coming about. And of course, we didn't have many people among Muslim scholars who could somehow stand and respond to many of the questions that philosophy brought about with itself at that time. One of the philosophers, who's very well known, probably you have heard his name, Ishaq al-Kandi. He had a son, Ishaq ibn Hunayn ibn Ishaq al-Kandi. And both the father and the son, they were among the translators of Greek books into Arabic. And this is Ishaq al-Kandi, who was contemporary of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam. Of course, he was very much respected. He was given lots of money by Banu al-Abbas to translate those books, to bring about ideas so that they could compete the great knowledge of A'imma alayhi salam. Maybe this was one of the things which was in their mind. Now, this man had lots of students, some of whom had communication with Imam al-Askari alayhi salam. Once Imam al-Askari heard that Ishaq al-Kandi is compiling a book on contradictions found in the Quran. Now, of course, if you recite the Quran, you might come up with verses which at the first glance might look contradictory, unless you know the exact explanation, because Quran is a complicated book. Despite it's very simple to understand, but if you want to understand the deeper meaning, it's very complicated. For example, one of the contradictions, I just mentioned one of the contradictions that just comes to the mind. On the Day of Judgment, in Surah Ar-Rahman, we have فَيَوْمَئِذٍ لَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْ ذَنْبِهِ إِنسٌ وَلَا جَانٌ. On that day, Day of Judgment, no human and no jinn will be asked about their sins. No question. يُعْرَفُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ بِسِيمَاهُمْ. The culprits will be known by their face. فَيُؤْخَذُ بِالنَّوَاسِ وَالْأَقْدَامِ. This is in Surah Ar-Rahman. In Surah Safat, we have وَقِفُوهُمْ إِنَّهُمْ مَسْئُولُونَ. Stop them, we want to question them. Now, of course, a man like Ishaq al-Kandi might say that, okay, these two verses are contradictory. In one place in Surah Ar-Rahman, Quran says that no one will be questioned about their sins. They all will be known by their faces. In Surah Safat, it says, keep them, we want to question them. And this is one contradiction. Again, in one ayah, for example, it says that every person will come and we will weigh their actions. وَالْوَزْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْحَقِّ. Weighing the actions is haq, is right, is truth. And again in another verse in Surah Taha, it says, فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. For kuffar, we do not set up any balance. There is no weighing for them. Their actions are not weighed. This is again another contradiction in the Quran. And you can go on and on and on. However, the contradictions come to a mind who does not know the true meanings of these verses. There are levels, there are different stages, there are different stations. Now, Ishaq al-Kandi was compiling a book on these contradictions, and he wanted to publish it. And one of the students of Imam Ishaq al-Kandi, who had communications with Imam alayhi salam, once came to the Imam, and Imam asked him, of course Imam was aware of what was going on. He asked him, what type of Muslims you are? Ishaq is compiling such a book and you do not tell him anything. He said, well, we are his students. How could we stand before him and tell things to him? Certainly he would defeat us in argument. We cannot tell him anything. Imam told him, if I tell you something and to tell Ishaq al-Kandi, would you tell him? He said, yes, of course. Imam told him, you of course go and ask him about his book and what he is writing. And then after some while, you ask him, you know, my Ustad, of course you are writing all these are all right. But what if the author of this book, Quran, does not mean what you have taken as the meaning of these verses? What if he had a different meaning in mind? Then does your argument still hold? Well, this man did the same. He went and he discussed about the book a little while, learned about it, and then he put the question to Ishaq at one point. And Ishaq was a man of thinking. Immediately when the question was put to him, what if the author of this book doesn't mean what you understand? He said, well, I know you for a long time. This question, it doesn't come from your mind, certainly. Who was you taught you this? He said, well, it just struck me. He said, no, tell me the truth. This question doesn't come from your mind. He said, yes, Abu Muhammad al-Askari has told me to ask you this. He said, yes, of course that's true. Abu Muhammad al-Askari can ask such a question. And he immediately asked for a fire and burned the whole book. Because the argument was strong there. That yes, you have understood that there are contradictions here, but what if the meanings are not what you have understood? This was another aspect of Imam Hassan al-Askari's life, of course, going into these type of, indirectly, of course, influencing these type of philosophers, thinkers, who were, of course, influencing the minds of Muslims overall. Nonetheless, Shi'i or Sunni, it didn't matter. But they were influencing the minds of the Muslim people. And one other important thing, as I mentioned, was his communication, his correspondence with great Shia scholars to give them direction in their, of course, very holy and sacred endeavor of compilation of Shi'i hadith, of ahadith of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, Imam al-Baqir and others. Although they couldn't certainly report very much from Imam Hassan al-Askari and his father, since they were in detention, they were in house arrest, but they were compiling the ahadith of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq and Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and Imam wanted to give them direction. And this is very important. I just want to mention very briefly a letter he wrote to Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Bawayh. This is the father of Sheikh al-Saduq, who was a compiler of hadith himself. And actually, a very interesting thing was that he was asking something from the Imam alayhi salam in terms of his children. He didn't have children, he wanted some children, but Imam actually directs him towards something else, giving him directions in his spiritual life. And of course, he had the children that he wanted by the dua of the Imam alayhi salam. He, of course, after writing the letter to the Imam answers him, أما بعد أوصيك يا شيخي ومؤتمدي. Of course, look how respectful Imam is addressing these men of knowledge. This is very important. If you want to be respectful in the eyes of A'immah alayhimus salam, gain knowledge. This is very, very important. Knowledge is more important than worship, than ibadah. فضل العالم على العابد كفضل القمر على كفضل القمر ليلة البدر على سائر النجوم. The merit, the preference of an alim, of course alim of religion, a religious scholar, someone who knows religion in the deep sense of it. The merit of him over someone who just worships is like the merit of the complete moon on Laylatul Badr over other stars. Why? Because an abid only serves himself or herself. Because they worship, they get a spiritual elation, elevation, that's good only for them. But an alim not only would elevate himself, they would elevate others as well. And this is why ulama, scholars, were treated very respectfully by A'immah alayhimus salam. And the way Imam is addressing Ali ibn Husayn ibn Bawayh is very interesting. Of course, Imam was very young. Ali ibn Husayn ibn Bawayh was a great scholar. Despite this, it doesn't mean that Imam should address him with such attributes. However, this was out of respect for ilm and knowledge. أوصيك يا شيخي ومؤتمدي, my shaykh and my reliable person, أبا الحسن علي بن الحسين القمي, وفقك الله لمرضاته وجعل من صلبك أولادا صالحين. And I pray that Allah would give you the children who are salihin. And of course, Sheikh al-Sadiq was given to him later on. I, of course, advise you to taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, establishing salat, giving zakat, and then a few things which are very important. أوصيك بمغفرة الذنب, forgiving the sins of others. وكظم الغيظ, and keeping your anger. وصلة الرحم, and connecting with your relatives. ومواساة الإخوان, and preferring your brothers, Muslim brothers and sisters over yourself. والسعي في حوائجهم في الأسر واليسر, and trying to fulfill whatever they need, whether you are in comfort or in hardship. In both situations you have to help your brothers and sisters. وَالتَّفَقُّهَ فِي الدِّينِ. Now this is what all A'imma advised, and to try to learn about the religion, to understand it deeply. This is very important. Especially our youngsters, sometimes some questions come to your mind that you find no answer for. However, since you see no one questions those things, you think that it is not allowed for you to question them, to think about them. You think that you have just to imitate what you see. But this is not right. You have to establish your religion with thoughtful understanding. For every question there is an answer. You see, this religion of us is religion of haqq. And haqq has always answers for everything. Because haqq is according to the reality. Therefore, do not be afraid of questioning, because when you question, you understand deeper. When a faith that comes with wind goes with wind. A faith which is shaky, you just try to keep it by not asking, not questioning, it goes by wind. But after you have established your faith with questions, and of course this is difficult. You might question, but finding the answer might be difficult. You have to go research, read books, ask different people. This is tafaqquh fi ad-din. At-tafaqquh fi ad-din means that to analyze deeply, to understand the religion. The Quran, the Hadith. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was saying that I would like to have a lash to lash the Shi'i youth so that they go and study about their religion. They find out about their religion. So, وَالتَّفَقُّهِ فِي الدِّينِ وَالتَّثَبُّتِ فِي الْأُمُورِ وَالتَّأَحُّدِ لِلْقُرْآنِ, and that you visit Quran very frequently. Recite the Quran very frequently. And many other things that he mentions here. One very important thing that he advises this Ibn way. وَعَلَيْكَ بِالصَّبْرِ وَانْتِظَارِ الْفَرَجِ, and you have to be patient and wait for the relief to come. انتظار الفرج. Relief means relief in faith. That someone who has the knowledge of faith as an authority, final authority, would come and establish the faith on the earth. This is Imam al-As Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajuhu Sharif. وَعَلَيْكَ بِالصَّبْرِ وَانْتِظَارِ الْفَرَجِ فَإِنَّ النَّبِيَّ صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قال أفضل أعمال أمتي انتظار الفرج. The most meritable action as a worship of my ummah is to wait for the faraj, for the relief to come. Now, why? I just explain a little bit about this and then finish the hadith. Why intidar al-faraj is so important? Waiting for the relief to come. Of course, when we say waiting for the relief, is not economical relief, is not social relief. It is relief in what is inside the heart. As the Quran is the shifa for what is inside the heart, Imam al-As alayhi salam is also the shifa for what is inside the heart. It's relief for that. And all of us know that we lack something spiritually. We don't have a real spiritual guide, a final authority who could really tell us what is right, what is wrong, and establishes the right on the earth. What is right on the earth. So this is something, if you think that things are in order, okay, very good, I have my religion, everything is in order, other people are in order as well, then of course we are not waiting for Imam al-Asr. But as soon as we realize that no, what we have lacks something, we recite the Quran, but we lack someone who could explain for us what is the true meaning of the Quran. He's not here. He's not with us. We worship, but we do not have someone to tell us the true meaning of this. And as soon as we realize this, we feel that something is lacking, and we wait for some relief to come. And this in itself is an action, waiting for some relief, because we realize that we are far away from God. We need someone to come and take us nearer, to connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why the Prophet said, the most meritable, أفضل أعمال أمتي, of the actions of my ummah is انتظار الفرج, waiting for that relief to come. Knowing that something is lacking. The Islam that we have is not complete Islam until the Imam alayhi salam would come. If we know this, of course this is the most meritable actions that we can do. So the Prophet says, أفضل أعمال أمتي انتظار الفرج ولا يزال. Now this is very interesting what the Imam says. شيعتنا في حزن. And continuously my Shia are in sadness, are in sorrow. حتى يظهر ولدي. Until my son would reappear, would come. الذي بشر به النبي صلى الله عليه وآله. The one that the Prophet gave the good tidings about him, that he is going to come. Continuously my Shia, our Shia are in huzn, are in sadness until he comes. أنه يملأ الأرض عدلا وقسطا كما ملأت ظلما وجورا. And he would fill the earth with justice and equity as it is after it is filled with injustice and oppression. So let's pray for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that first of all make us realize what we are lacking while the Imam is not among us, is in occultation. And secondly, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten in the reappearance of Imam al-Asr, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif, wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tahirin.